Welcome to St. Mark's Virtual Bible Study. I'm in place of Pastor today to complete an assignment for Seminarian. So today we're going to skip ahead a little bit in the Gospel, and we're going to look at Genesis 21, verses 8 through 21. Now, before we get started today, I want to do a little introduction of events prior to this passage so that we can maybe understand the passage a little bit better. Many years prior to the birth of Isaac, Abraham lived in a territory of Negev in Gerar between Kadesh and Shur. Sarah is Abraham's half-sister. They share the same father. Abraham essentially made the same mistake that he's going to make 20 years earlier. Abraham confided in Abimelech that Sarah is his half-sister. So he took Sarah for his harem. And God came to him in a dream and told him to give Sarah back to Abraham. And so he did. And he also gave them servants and animals and the choice of land in which to dwell. So God promised Sarah that she would bear a child. Now that promise didn't come true for another 25 years when Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90 years old. In Genesis 21:6, now Sarah said, "God has brought laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me." That line of the text foreshadows the child's name. His name is Isaac. He laughs, which calls to mind their laughter in the past and the joy that the child's birth brought to both Sarah and Abraham. Now, would one of you like to read the passage?
I read. I read the last time.
Oh, okay.
The child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, playing with her son Isaac. So she said to Abraham, "Cut out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not inherit along with my son Isaac." The matter was very distressing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, "Do not be distressed because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be named for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him also, because he is your offspring." So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she cast the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot. For she said, "Do not let me look on the death of the child." And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What troubles you, Hagar? Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Come, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make a great nation of him." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt.
Thank you. Either Charlotte or Gail, did anything in that passage stand out to you, or maybe seemed a little odd, or just anything?
Jealousy.
Jealousy?
Because Sarah was fine as long as her son did not play with Hagar's son.
Mm-hmm.
And jealousy set in.
Mm-hmm.
And it started way back then in Genesis, and it's today.
Right, and we saw this before with between Hagar and Sarah in Genesis 16, when Hagar was sent to the wilderness then.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So kind of foreshadowed the events that are happening now.
I didn't realize that the sons would be considered equal. I just assumed that this son, since he was the son of the slave, that he would not be a legitimate heir.
Right, but I guess because of the time and the culture, he's still Abraham's firstborn son.
Oh, so it follows the father whether there's
Right.
marriage or not.
Right.
And I think in Abraham's eyes, it was his son.
Yeah, that's
Sarah
I
was the
got
one who had the difficult time
Yes.
with it.
Right.
Yes.
Right, she did. So in verse 8, it's talking a little bit about just, I think, like what's customary. So when the child was weaned, they were 2 or 3 years of age and then a big feast. Why? Do you know why that they would have a
No.
big feast?
No.
Up until the age of 2 or 3, the likelihood of that child living was kind of up in the air.
Oh.
So after
okay.
they get to the age of 2 or 3 and are weaned and are eating food, then it's very likely that they'll live until adulthood. And then we can see in 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 22, that everything associated with Isaac is a celebration.
Oh.
And so if you look into that passage, you'll see there's always a celebration around Isaac, which is interesting. And do you know what the name Isaac means?
Just what you had written in the introduction.
He laughs. That's
Laughter.
Mm-hmm.
and then that's why he was named. Supposedly why he was named that, because of the joy that having a child brought to Sarah and Abraham.
Well, imagine, for an older woman like that, that would be joy.
Oh,
But-
absolutely.
And it was her first child, so
Yeah.
that for any woman, their first child should bring joy.
And she's 90.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
How about Ishmael? Does anybody know what Ishmael means?
I don't remember.
God listens. So now this is going to be important a little bit later on in the passage. In the verses that we read, we will see later how God was listening and to whom God is listening, and it makes it a little bit easier to understand, because I do know parts of this are kind of wait,
Yeah.
what did I just read?
Yeah.
To understand what
Yeah.
all was actually going on.
Because who's Ishmael?
Ishmael's Hagar's son.
Okay. Did I? Okay, Ishmael.
Isaac is Sarah's, and
Okay.
Ishmael is Hagar's. And an interesting thing to note in here, I don't think I put it in our study guide. Abraham and Sarah never refer to Hagar by name.
Oh.
They call her a servant or a slave, depending on what version of the Bible that you're using. Now, why? And this was interesting in my class when we were my discussion group when we were talking about this too. Why do you think they would never refer to her by name?
Well, I guess I think Sarah was really jealous of her.
Yeah.
And Abraham, to keep peace in the family, probably said, well, I'm not even going to mention her name.
Yeah.
Maybe so. And I mean, if we even think about, like, we joke about this on the farm, but it's kind of true. I don't like to name any of the animals that are going to be in the freezer later, right?
Oh.
Because
Yeah.
that makes that it doesn't humanize the animal, but
Right.
certainly calling
Right.
Hagar by name that humanizes that, right? That gives you a connection or a bond.
Right.
On the farm, I'm trying to keep that like, hey, I need to not know you too well.
Right.
And so it's easier also to hate if
Right.
you don't name somebody. You
Right.
don't know their name. You don't know them.
And Sarah certainly hated, she just downright hated
Oh,
Hagar.
100%. I think.
I just think that Abraham, to keep peace in the family, he wasn't going to do anything wrong. He
Right.
had to live with Hagar, think about Hagar and
Mhm.
their son,
Right.
but he wasn't going to.
Right, he was in
Make a
between a
hiding
rock and a
home.
hard place, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it does say further down that he was distressed. Well, I guess you would be, because who told Abraham to go to Hagar and bear a child?
She did.
She did, right?
Mhm.
She told him to do that. He did what he was told, and now, I'm in a
Jealousy
bad
sets
spot.
in.
Yeah, jealousy. And is it more than just jealousy that she's jealous of Hagar, or is there something more to it than that?
That he developed feelings for her, I guess.
Well, maybe.
But I think she was jealous of Hagar and her having a son, because a son was important.
Right. Worried that maybe Isaac would not inherit
Yeah.
anything, right? That they'd be kind of left out in the cold, right? And that it's all going to be all about Ishmael, and he's going to get the inheritance, and he's going to be the leader when of the tribe when Abraham dies, right? So
Was Hagar, was Ishmael born before Isaac or after?
before.
Before, yes. So
Yeah,
that
like-
would mean he was the eldest son, and that was
Yeah.
important.
Yes.
Because-
Yes, and I've read a couple of different things of his age, and it's between 12 and 14 years old. Ishmael was when Isaac was born.
Oh.
So, and I don't think anybody knows exactly how old, but he was, old, a little bit older.
He still was the eldest son.
Right, he was the eldest son. And so, do we see any of this? Like, Ishmael was the heir apparent, right? He was Abraham's first son, and Sarah wanted to prevent Ishmael from taking her son's inheritance. Where do we see that behavior today? About inheritance and taking it, and
I think you see it all the time. I mean, I know that's too general a statement, but I think you see it in families all the time. Or even if it isn't firstborn or secondborn, that one child may think they're favored over another one, even if the family didn't need to do that. Or it's I've seen other families where the one that appears to be the most favored is the one who's done the least, appears to have done the least for the parents, which causes hard feelings. And people are funny about money.
especially with the death, and now there's an
Yes.
inheritance, and who should get this and who should get that, and it gets
Yeah.
a little.
Yeah, and even if they have nothing, I mean, I had an aunt in Virginia, and she didn't have children. She raised her siblings, which was my mother was of one, and my one cousin, who, I mean, she just presided over it. I mean, we all went down to divvy up the stuff, put the house up for sale, blah 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 blah, and my cousin said to all of us, whatever you want. Aunt MaryAnn wanted you to have whatever you want. Well, everything that we would look at, or I would say, wow, that's really cool. Oh, well, Aunt so-and-so said I could have that. And I'm like, okay, you know what? There's nothing here that I wanted a memento, of course, to keep with me, but it didn't matter what it was, and it was nothing. It was just stuff. So, it's there, So.
And a lot of families, when it comes to settle an estate, when they can really have problems. Siblings can fight so that they don't talk and
Right.
and
Yeah, we see that. I mean, it's not quite the same
thing,
situation, but
it's just, maybe a child's not involved, but it's two adults
Mm-hmm.
who are siblings.
yeah, absolutely. That no, I need this, you need that, and then we're fighting over that. Now, in modern times, we're fighting over stuff that probably, in the most part, doesn't matter.
Right.
But then they were fighting over not just inheritance and things, but that position as firstborn, right? Why? Was there something else behind that? What did that bring? And it's hard for us because, we don't have to go search out food or things like that. Like, we have compared to back then, we have a pretty cushy life. So what elements come into play? What are they worried about?
Well, I think he would. Sarah was probably afraid that Ishmael would be the leader of the clan, so to speak.
Right.
And he would have that power to ostracize her then at that point.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows if he would? Maybe he would push her out, and then she would have nothing to eat, nothing to wear, nowhere to
Because
live.
everything they owned would be lost.
Right, because neither Sarah nor Hagar had a job, right?
Right.
So they relied on Abraham,
Mm-hmm.
and so there was that instability of what am I going to do? So that's probably a little bit of the motive, besides jealousy, which I think there was jealousy there, but I think part of the motive is their stability of, oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
Right.
So instead, first, I guess you can look at it as self-preservation. I don't identify with Sarah at all in this passage, but she pushes Hagar out because, I'm going to have a place to live, and so is my my
Right.
son. Right, but she pushes him out.
So you're saying if that it was Isaac, it was up to whoever inherited, it was up to their good graces if the siblings and their parents would get anything, as in food,
Right, so
shelter.
it was more like a tribe of keeping
Yeah.
them, that person. So Abraham was in charge of servants and laborers and things like that, and Sarah, and they had a harem, but it's not like a harem of how we think today. But that was it. Like, he was the ruler of their little tribe, and so he determined who stayed and who goes. And so
Okay.
she was worried that there'd be some instability.
Okay.
All right, so why didn't Abraham stand up to Sarah and remind her that she told him to take her servant and have a child?
Preservation, self-preservation. Saying I told you so to your spouse never really works.
Don't you think God was there at that point? I think God was telling Abraham. I think God was saying, because we know he was the father of the nation, so.
Well, and what promise did
Sarah.
God make to Abraham earlier about Ishmael?
I don't remember.
That he would be given a nation.
Yeah, that he'd be given a nation.
Yeah.
Right? So he had already made that promise to Abraham, right? And we know that, so we have to have a little faith in God. Yeah, hey, this is what he said. So even though Abraham was distressed, okay, I'm not going to stand up to Sarah. And, God seemed to reward Sarah, but really he took her, I guess, counsel, like, okay, well, this is how we're going to get Ishmael his own nation. Even though her motives were suspect, Sarah's certainly were. God worked that, it made it work out in the end, right?
Right.
But yeah, so he heeded the counsel of Sarah, even though she had underlying motives, but he made it work out for everybody. Because he also promised Sarah that she would have the son. So God reminded Abraham, I'm sorry, it was Genesis 17, I said 16. God reminded Abraham of his promise to Ishmael in Genesis 17, verse 20. Abraham was struggling with casting out Ishmael because he was his son. God's reminder was meant to ease Abraham's worry. And are we ever asked to make difficult decisions that will cause us great heartache, but will benefit the greater good?
Well, yeah, I can't,
I think every day we face problems and things like that, and we have to make a decision. And I think of taking care of my brother.
Yes.
It was no hardship for me.
No.
But you're right, Charlotte, but that was for the greater good. He
And when I retired, I went right into taking care of my mother. I didn't have time to, people have said to me, don't you just teach? I didn't have time,
No.
because I was always taking care of people. And it was one right after the other. An aunt, a man across the street, my brother, and I didn't have any qualms about it whatsoever. It was something I did.
right, and perhaps that was your path. That was what you were meant to do. For who knows why, but God has a path for you, and you just, all right, this is what we're going to do, and you do it. But sometimes you do have to make a sacrifice, and it's.
And people have said to me, how can you go visit all these shut-ins? I don't see them as shut-ins. I see them as friends, and what a joy it is for me to go and be with them. And I sat with some of them while they were dying, and it didn't bother me. I was sad, but it didn't bother me.
Right. No,
I was just thankful to be there.
absolutely. Even when Pastor Matthew and I, we spend a lot of time here at church, and we're doing a lot of stuff. And it's like, oh, you don't have any free time. First of all, I don't understand what I would do with free time. But you know what, I'm not doing it for me, it's for the greater good. People need food, they need this, they need that, and oh well, you know, I can, you know, sit and relax, you know, when I retire and never. So, it's all good. All right, so we're going to just skip down a little bit. So to cast out means to discard. Oop, did I skip too far? Well, so Abraham fills a skin of water and sends Hagar and Ishmael out. And then we're going to move down to Hagar leaves Ishmael under a bush. And so she cast him under this bush. And to cast means to discard. So why would Hagar discard Ishmael? What was Hagar feeling?
Well, she didn't want to see her son die, and so she put him under a bush so the beating sun wouldn't be coming down on him. But no one wants to see a child die.
Right. And then she went a distance away, and then was weeping and crying, and that was her form of praying to God, right? So she just needed some time away, right? So when I first read it, I was like, you just discard your kid. But to read further into the meaning, okay, she put him under the bush from the sun, and she needed a moment, a time out to, I got to go figure this out. What am I going to do? And go pray and kind of get herself together.
And I think that's saying to us, we need to take time out too.
Yeah.
And especially with the situation we're in now, we need to take time out to pray to God that He'll get us through this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So she wasn't discarding him.
No.
She was praying and praying. She was praying to God because she felt hopeless and powerless. And many people right now during this pandemic are feeling that hopelessness and powerless. You know, you're powerless. What can I do? But let's let Hagar's actions be a lesson to us. In our time of need, we need to pray to God. We need to remember what our faith is. And then what can you do? It could be something that you feel is small, calling friends, making a donation, I don't know, just getting yourself outside and walking, reading scripture, anything little that will be helpful.
I have a friend, and she said, I'm the only one that ever called her.
Aww.
She lives alone, she's a widow, and I call her a couple times a week. And then I'll walk by the house and I'll stop in and I'll just say, you all right? And I'll chat with her for a few minutes and then I'll leave. And she'll say to me, you're the only one that ever does anything.
And so you're the bright spot in her day, which is incredible. Yeah. And that little act on your part is huge on your friend's part. That is amazing to her, right? Yeah, so it's awesome. So in verse 18, God is telling Hagar to go get the boy and hold on to him. Basically, I'll help you. I am here for you. That's what he's telling her. But who did God hear praying? Or who does, in verse 17, who did God hear crying and praying to him? Did he hear Hagar? Ishmael. And interesting enough, Ishmael means God hears. So verse 9 could have been a little bit of foreshadowing that God would be listening to Ishmael. We need to remember that God is always listening, no matter from where we are praying or how we are praying. It doesn't have to be some big fancy prayer. It could be in the middle of sobbing about something and that, hey, I need help. What can I do? Are there times when we wallow in our own self-pity and not listen to God?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm wondering too, when you were doing about verse 15 to cast means to discard, that, you know, if you discard your own need to control or whatever that problem is, like Hagar discarded Ishmael, which was her problem, her large burden, and finally let that go, put it away from herself, that she finally was able to call onto God and then hear what the problem was, which was Ishmael, you know, that she finally heard what she needed to do. you know, and again, in this time, I think when you say hopeless, that we are hopeless, and if, everybody knows I went through counseling and stuff, and the one thing the psychiatrists and counselors listen for is if you feel hopeless. And when you feel hopeless, it means you need guidance, their guidance, their medication, or whatever, so that when we are finally hopeless, and there's so many people who are more depressed now because of, you know, they've lost their sense of who they are, what they do. It's all upended. So that again, like you said, we all said, we just need to turn to God and listen, and then feel that presence, that comfort, and then get direction from that. So this is when we, like I said, when I came in, I thought this is really hard, but it is quite relevant. Thank you, MaryAnn.
You're welcome. And you know, it wasn't until I really started doing the Bible study, sorry, Dr. Hoffman, that I really understood, like, oh wait, this is really relevant to today. I wasn't sure what it was relevant to or where I would use it, and then I started doing that, and I'm like, oh, we can do it there, which is interesting. So I think that we let a lot of noise, outside noise, get in our way of us, of what's going on. Everything else is more important and whatever. We need to take that time and center ourselves and pray and listen to God, not just keep going and going, but put aside some time to just, okay.
I think we need to have a place. I have a place in my home where I sit and I read Bible and I read books, religious books and things like that. And every morning I do it. And even when Junior was here, he'd say something. I said, "Now don't bother me.
I know you told us
Bible study. I don't want to be bothered." I'm sorry. And he didn't know.
And then you'd feel guilty because you told him.
And then every night I do the same thing.
And that is great. So I'm gonna talk to Jim. Maybe he'll build me a she shed.
Or something that doesn't burn.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that we need a place somewhere that you can just take, you know, a few minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and just be like, okay.
I think everyone has to be able to step aside and think for, this is my spot.
And shut things off. I mean, because of work, I'm always tied to my phone and this and that. And lately, my group, we've been good. A couple of my partners that for work, hey, I'm gonna shut the phone off at 5. If it's a 911 emergency, something horrible happening, give me a call. Otherwise, let's be done for tonight. So we've been making a concerted effort not to, like, it's 5:30, we're done. Nobody's dying, we're okay. And we just leave it at that.
And I think everyone, especially today, that you have to do that. And who do you go to? Me, if I didn't have God, knowing God was there with me, I'd be lost.
I agree. From saying for myself, yeah, I agree. So Hagar prayed and listened. God guided Hagar to life-sustaining water, you know, and He opened her eyes. So, how has God opened our eyes as a church during this pandemic?
I think we're aware of the needs of people. People that we never knew, but they're there and they need us. And when I say they need us, maybe they don't need to come to church, but they need us because we are providing them a meal. And even it's amazing. I've heard the pastor say on Ash Wednesday, there's a need for ashes. Whether they go to church or not, they know the sense of ashes. And when he's down there at Boyer's, I've heard him say, some people say, "Will you pray?"
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful thing. And then people say, "Well, I don't know how to pray." Well, Jesus didn't lay down any laws on how to pray. Just talking to your Father, like your daddy. Abba is daddy.
Yeah.
So, and you just talk to him. And I think that's what Hagar did. She just talked to God like he was her daddy.
Right, and it is. There's no special way to pray. Well, we have prayer books and stuff, and they're okay, especially, when you're looking, okay, I would like to comfort somebody, and I want to have good, sensible words, and maybe, you consult that, because I do that. But when it's just you and God, I mean, you just talk to him, right? There's no rule of this is going to be.
No one's listening to you except God, so
Right.
it's a one-to-one basis there.
Right. So it's funny, when I first started studying this passage, and we studied it in depth for the past month for seminary, my group did, I wasn't sure where I was going with this, or where the whole passage was going, or what it really meant. But I'm going to read a paragraph that I wrote about overall the whole passage and what I think how it actually works out for us today. So our days are filled with silence from our neighbors, friends, and family because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The media slices through that silence with heartbreaking stories of death, predictions for more deaths, unemployment, and overall despair. We get caught up watching the news and social media posts, which causes more anxiety and desperation. Or we can turn our faith back to God. God made a promise to us over 2,000 years ago. Look at how distraught Sarah, Hagar, and Abraham were over their situation. Each one was distraught for different and maybe not so altruistic reasons, but nevertheless, God protected and cared for each one of them regardless of their motives. And I think that's something that we really need to remember. Maybe I don't make the best decisions, and I'm not always the best person, and I'm a little snotty sometimes. God doesn't care. He has offered grace through the death and resurrection of his son Jesus, right? So I think that's important to remember, because that's Sarah's character, right? She is definitely not perfect, and her motives are not true. And then you have Hagar, who is essentially a victim, right? I mean, she didn't ask for any of this, and
It's all Sarah's fault.
It's all Sarah's fault, right?
Someone has to take the blame, and Sarah's the one.
Sarah is the one, and so and she is the victim from that. But she turns towards God, and hey, I need some help here. And then poor Abraham, he's kind of stuck in the middle. He listened to Sarah and trying to do right by her. He's trying to do right by Hagar and his eldest son, probably more Ishmael than Hagar. I'm not sure how true his feelings are for Hagar, but certainly for his firstborn son. And he's kind of stuck too. So no matter your situation, this passage, tells you, hey, listen to God. He will get you through this no matter what, which I thought was an interesting way that it kind of fleshed out.
And as a result, we have really two nations.
Yes,
Yeah.
Absolutely, don't we? So that goes back to the last verse. God made good on his promise to Ishmael, that he would be blessed with a nation of his own, which came through patience, right? So do we demand today that God answer our prayers?
We could demand, but
Yeah.
we have to sometimes wait for the answer. Sometimes it's no.
Yes. We might rail against the fact that our prayer was.
We might not like the answer, right? That we
No,
get.
and we don't like the answer, and we could get angry, but I always figure Jesus got angry with God.
Yeah.
And so I guess I can get angry too.
Right. And do you think that today, do we think that because we ask God for something, he'll grant it like it's a wish? Do you think people, not necessarily not us,
Oh, yeah.
but people think like it's like a wish, like he's a genie or something?
I think people look at God that way.
Mm-hmm. I do see it a lot. I try to really limit and not read comments on certain things in social media, because I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you people doing? But it is out there. Well, if you believe in God, well, he didn't stop any of this or this.
That's
but,
right.
But it doesn't work that way.
No.
And, you have to believe in God. He's not going to, did you believe in God? I don't know if you do, but you have to believe in God and have faith in God first. He's not just going to be like, oh yeah, over here, you want that? Okay, that's not a problem. Just because you say, God, I need your help, that's great. That's your first step. But you have to have that faith in him and belief that, hey, okay, he is the one. And I think that gets a little muddled.
And you can still have that faith and love and still be disappointed or still be brokenhearted.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I think like, well, if there's social media, and I think even Charlotte said too, other people, I think that's one of the hardest things for me when like if I say like my thank you Jesus, and that someone might be like, well, that's great for you, but God did this, God left his child die, why can that be? How can that be if it's a forgiving God? And it's like, I try, it's hard for me to have an answer for that other than, it's our will that gets in the way of God's will, that we might not know why that child died, or why that person who is a habitual drunk survives all their accidents and this and that, and somebody evil continues to survive. That I don't have answers. I try and tell people, I try to defend God, that I just maintain my faith, but I don't have that answer. But that's hard out there in the real world.
It absolutely is, and a while back now, probably I think 3 years now. Has it been that long? I was in a different group at work, and my boss was not the nicest person at all, and I mean really kind of evil towards me, and I didn't enjoy going to work. I didn't really want to go to work. I had to, and I had no idea why I was going through this. Like, are you kidding me? God, what are we doing here? I don't think I can do this. I would have this talk usually daily in my car and in the garage before I went into work. And, and the nicest thing was there was two other my coworkers. They'd be like, look, he's got your back. We're here for you. I mean, even though really they couldn't really do anything, but they're like, nope, he's got your back. Just know that he's got your back. And that was a good reminder, because I had no idea. I still am not quite sure why I had to go through that road. But he did. He got me through it. And, on the other side, I mean, better off for it. I have a little bit different perspective. Which is good, but it was a hard road to walk, and I'm like, what are we doing here? But he didn't give me I asked, can we just be done with whatever's going on here? Because I can't, just show me what I need to know, because I'm done. But, I mean, eventually that happened. And part of what it was is that I think that I needed to do was I needed to learn how to stand up for myself. And because it seems like once I had that last straw, and I did, next thing you know, I'm over in a different group.
Miracles still happen.
I know. 2.5 years later, some of us don't learn our lesson quickly.
Yeah.
But it happened. But it happened.
All right. Now you had that problem. Now think of Abraham. He's got 2 wives that he has to handle and 2 sons.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's a big problem for him.
It is, and then that makes up his whole life. Like, it's not like he can get away from it, right? I mean, I would, go home every night and not have to worry about work. Where's he going? It's kind of there.
And the cause of the problem was because he listened to his Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe if he hadn't listened to Sarah, but he did. I mean, he loved Sarah. He didn't, and whether he loved Hagar, we don't know, but he did what Sarah wanted, and he had a problem after that. And I think that that's the way God wanted it. God wanted to establish another nation.
Yes.
So this was the way he was going to do it.
And the events leading up to it maybe didn't work out how God thought it was going to work out, because our own free will gets in our way. Right? And so Sarah kind of was messing with God's plans a little bit, and he's like, okay, wait a second. I gotta figure this out here, right? Which is interesting. We do get in our own way sometimes.
Most times.
Yeah, most of the time. So perhaps we need to practice a little patience when we pray, right? It's all in God's time, not our time,
Right.
which is hard to,
And we have to accept the answer that we get.
yeah, absolutely.
Even if it's no, we still have to accept it. And if it's, I'll give it to you later, we still have to accept it.
Right.
And too many times today, people want everything instant. And it doesn't work that way with God.
No, and then our choices that we make may affect, the outcome. Like, I truly believe, like, God knows where our path is. However, sometimes instead of a straight line, it's all over the place because of ourselves. Or we think we have a plan, but other things need to happen too. I think of just my journey to get to seminary is all over the place. I mean, who thought that I would be going to a Lutheran seminary? I was raised Russian Orthodox. That, women didn't really have a place in the hierarchy of the church, right? I mean, you could be the matushka and marry the priest. No, thank you. But you didn't participate in services, so I had no idea. And I mean, even when Jim was in seminary, I wouldn't say that I thought that, oh yeah, let's go to seminary. It didn't work out that way, but I think that I couldn't have either. Like, Jim wouldn't have made it to seminary and through seminary unless, certain events happened, right? Or had the skills that he needed to collect in order to be a pastor here at St. Mark's that you needed.
I wonder if, you're saying the path that you had, I wonder if Abraham, when he was with Sarah, I wonder if he thought this was going to be a straight path.
Yeah.
Or was it wasn't, because Hagar came into it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he may have thought, okay, this is where we're going. And then Sarah kind of throws another detour into it, and God has to kind of correct that, right? And you got all kinds of stuff
All
going on.
kinds of things going on in there, and but in the end, it turns out all right.
Yeah. And I think that's what we have. Okay, just have faith, have patience, do what is right, and hopefully, it will work out. It just might not be exactly the way that you thought it was. Did you have any other questions? Oh, I guess I should go to, Sue Rubella says, good morning. I do believe God has paths for us. Sometimes he directs us from one path to another. Oh, I agree. And Sarah Dauber, Della's daughter, she said she's getting a she shed tomorrow. Well, yeah.
She said business is working.
Apparently so. So that's good. I don't know that I have any other, I can't see any other comments. Nope, that's all I have so far, so who knows. Did you have a comment, Matthew? No? No comment? All right, so I thank everybody for tuning into this kind of detoured virtual Bible study today. So I guess maybe we'll flip-flop. This is supposed to be in June sometime, this one. I don't know if Pastor's then going to do the one that was supposed to be today. So, but I thank both of you for, again, helping me with one of my classes. Thank you.